Our latest writers' meeting had explored the themes of English as a second language, comfort foods, and struggle against depression, which always comes up in the library because they have some very exclusionary policies which really were brought home to us this time. We happened to end up in the library on the same floor and at the same time where our old group used to meet, the Creative Writing Club, but now there's this English as a second language writing club, which has all the institutional support, the advertising and the volunteers and the posh part of the library, where they aren't hidden away from everybody else in a basement room or behind closed doors and so on. And the big one was something that came up from a topic I coincidentally got from a Heidi Sawyer YouTube video, the 26-minute mark, of why you are so sensitive and how to develop your intuitive skills. This said that you can bring out the types of emotional deprivation people have been subjected to in the past and make them all come to the surface by making them stare at some sort of comfort food. The first one she mentioned was cake, which I've symbolized here by donuts, because these are cake donuts. I didn't have any actual cake. She also mentioned biscuits. Now, she's an English as a second language person, so she uses these words I don't understand, but I think that translates as cookies. I didn't have any other cookies, so I got something that actually looks like what we call a biscuit. She also mentioned chocolate, which is pretty much translatable into any language, and something she called crisps. Now, I think the real English word for this, for people who speak proper English, is chips. Now, she said that there are these 4 main comfort food groups, and you can tell what sort of emotional deprivation someone's experienced by what they crave. And a lot of these, of course, often go with coffee. People might want to have them with coffee. But our library, we finally figured out, is probably subjecting us all to a form of psychological experimentation by depriving us of all these sorts of things, because they won't let anyone go on any floor other than the first floor, the main floor, and take food or drink with them. So the way to really mess with people's minds, you see, is to deprive them of these things and then make them look at them. And what did happen with the English as a second language writers groups, they got a big group, like 25 people there with a waiting list of more. And they got their own dedicated coffee machine, whereas one of our people trying to independently struggle on with no advertising other than what I can get on YouTube, which would be great if it actually worked for search engines, but somehow I'm getting far more hits than anybody else, any other writers group, and I'm still not showing up at the top of the page. I don't know why. But one of our group came in with a coffee cup and got stopped by security and what we called Coffeelisted. So that was one of the topics of how you get coffee listed in the public library, and you got booted back to the first floor again. So that led to a story, this horrific, overtold story of being, harassed and beaten up by a one-eyed ogre-like security guard who, had the sort of attitude, how could you have the temerity to bleed on me when I beat up on you, sort of thing. And another story had to do with daylight savings time, kicked in a little bit. I just looked it up and found out it was a wartime measure. So originally it was just brought in the First and Second World Wars for emergency conservation of power, and now today it's practically permanent. Another way that the wartime mentality has creeped into our lives on a permanent basis. But they talked about the difficulty of resetting your dog or resetting your cat, because they want to be fed. They don't care whether it's daylight savings time or not. You can't turn them back an hour. Emphasizing how people are in some ways similar. They're going to get distressed if you tell them you can't eat or drink. And so that became built into some of the stories. One of the assignments of the English as a second language group was to write an application where you pretend that you're applying to be allowed to be in this writers group. So, of course, our writers group adapted that, overhearing this. And one made a list of all these comfort food deprivations and things that had to be craved and eaten and ways that you had to be emotionally insecure in order to qualify as a writer. And the phrase came up, empathizing with a mallet, which I'm not quite sure how this is actually more of a hammer than a mallet, not a perfect shape. But that became popular and reused in many ways. One of them was imagining what it would be like if a mallet wanted to apply to be in the English as a second language writing class, because as a mallet your first language isn't English, it's percussive force. So It was designed to make people feel sorry for the mallet and wish and allow him to be entered into the class with everybody else. Another one was identifying the villain by the coffee mug he drank and bringing up a rule that he wasn't allowed to have a certain coffee mug on the premises and had to be excluded. There was also one on the theme of resetting animals, of a cat chasing its own tail. So we had several stories on that, that living in the belly of the beast among what we see as, comically, as the demonic minions, although in some ways in real life, in less obvious ways, they do act that way. And that was some of the things that came up in our writers group, and I hope we'll be more nourished in the future. We're celebrating almost our 1-year anniversary of survival without institutional support, so I hope we'll continue on in the future.